He built an empire in silence. A lake house no one knew about, secrets no one dared to ask, until one woman published everything and turned his quiet fortune into a public collapse. But what if losing everything was exactly what he needed? The first thing anyone noticed about Marcus Delaney wasn't his money. It was his quiet. The kind that made a room feel fuller when he left. He wasn't born rich, the opposite really. His childhood home in Flint, Michigan had a collapsed porch and a living room with 3 broken windows which stayed broken all through winter. His mother worked 2 jobs, his father worked none, and Marcus worked from 13 scraping gum off theater seats, selling frozen lemonade in July, anything. But by 42 he had what others called a portfolio. Real estate in 4 states, a tech logistics company he bought at auction and turned around in 3 years, and the crown jewel, the lake house. Not a mansion, not excessive, just cedar, glass, and silence tucked into the tree line of a forgotten Wisconsin town. That house was sacred. That was the deal he made with himself: make money but keep a place where none of it matters. He didn't bring clients there, not girlfriends, not even his younger brother, Chris, who'd once begged him, "Come on, man, just for a weekend." Marcus said no, not because he didn't love Chris, but because the lake house wasn't for love or business. It was for forgetting. That changed the night he met Eva. She wasn't who people expected a millionaire to fall for. She wasn't tall, wasn't flashy, didn't wear red lipstick or ask what he did for a living. She ran a used bookstore and thought wealth made people lonely. That honesty was oxygen to Marcus. 3 months in, he told her about the lake house. 4 months in, he brought her there. And he told her everything. Not just about the business. About why he hadn't spoken to their father in 10 years. About the night Chris nearly died and how Marcus used the last $600 in his checking account to get him into rehab. About the investor who tried to blackmail him, and how Marcus had quietly bought the man's entire company, dismantled it, and sold it off in pieces. He told Eva because she didn't want anything from him. Or so he believed. When the article came out, a glossy 6-page spread in Vanity North titled "The Real Wolf of Lake Superior," Marcus was in Tampa, closing on a commercial property. He only saw the headline because Chris texted him, "You see this BS." The article laid it all bare: the backroom deals, the blackmail, the lake house. Eva's words quoted in italics. He said the house was a sanctuary, that no one alive knew what happened there but me. She hadn't even changed his name. Marcus's phone rang so much that day he threw it into the hotel pool. The fallout wasn't fast, it was surgical. Investors pulled out. The logistics company's stock dove 18% in 3 hours. Old enemies surfaced, sniffing weakness. And worse, the lake house, the one place where nothing was for sale, was now mapped in a feature photo with coordinates. A must-see destination for readers curious about the myths of American wealth. That night Marcus drove 12 hours straight. Didn't stop for gas or food. Just silence and anger and a throbbing, aching hole where trust used to be. When he got there, 2 teenagers were spray painting "Wolf" on his dock. A man with a Nikon lens darted into the woods. The mailbox had been ripped off. The curtains, his mother's, flapped through a broken window. He stood there a long time, quiet again, but this time it wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the kind that comes before a storm. Marcus didn't shout, he didn't chase the kids off the dock or call the police. He just stood in the gravel, watching them like they were ghosts, and he was the only one alive. When one of them noticed him, a skinny boy with peach fuzz and a hoodie 2 sizes too big, he froze, dropped the spray can, the other ran. The boy stood his ground, trembling. "You Marcus Delaney?" he asked, voice too high to pretend at toughness. Marcus didn't answer. "You really built all this from nothing?" "Still nothing." The boy's voice faltered. "They said you buried money out here, like literal money, cash." Marcus walked past him without a word. The door to the lake house was already cracked open, pried with something metal. He pushed it gently. Inside there was glass on the floor. From the photo frames, the one with his mother at 50 blowing out candles on a cake she'd made herself. Shattered, the air smelled of mildew and old beer. He walked to the fireplace and sat down on the cold stone, closed his eyes. Buried money, that's what they thought. Because people can't imagine that a man would build something beautiful just to keep himself from falling apart. The next day he met with a lawyer, tried to file for defamation, but truth, twisted as it was still truth. Eva hadn't lied, she'd just opened her palm and let it all fall out. By Friday, a media van had parked down the hill, then another. Reporters lingered in canoes, hopping for a statement. One even snuck a drone over the lake. Marcus locked the door, pulled the curtains, sat in his mother's rocking chair, the one thing they hadn't broken or taken, and stayed that way for nearly a week. Until Chris showed up. He didn't knock, just walked in, a grocery bag under one arm, beer in the other. "Jesus," Chris said, taking in the dark, the smell, the man on the chair. You look like you fell into the lake and forgot how to swim. Marcus didn't move, didn't speak. Chris dropped the bags, walked over, and without ceremony slapped him across the face. Hard. Marcus's head snapped sideways. Feel that? Chris snapped. That's what alive feels like. A long silence stretched between them. Then Marcus laughed, short, bitter, surprised. Chris sat beside him. You think you're the only one humiliated? They're digging up dirt on me too. Rehab, DUI, remember Wendy? Her dad runs the Journal. He offered 10 grand for a personal take. Marcus looked away. I told him to go to hell, Chris said, because you're still my brother, even if you're a rich idiot who trusted the wrong woman. Marcus closed his eyes. I told her everything. Chris leaned back. Yeah, that's the problem. You told her everything, but not us. It hit like a punch to the chest. Do you even know, Chris went on, voice quieter now, how many times I wanted to call you and just ask how you're doing? But I thought he's rich, he's busy, he doesn't need me. I did, Marcus said, every damn day. They sat in the silence together, this time a different kind. And then Chris said, so what are you gonna do? Marcus didn't answer right away. But his eyes opened, and they didn't look like a man drowning anymore. They looked like a man calculating the tide. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window until the sun dragged itself over the pines, bleeding light across the lake's bruised surface. The house smelled of dust, old cedar, and memory. He opened every window, let the wind clean what he couldn't. By noon, he made 3 calls. First to his general counsel, sell the Florida deal, all of it, I don't care the price. Second to his accountant, I want everything frozen, every personal asset, trusts, accounts, the works. Third to someone he hadn't spoken to in 6 years, Lyle Wexler, a former journalist turned fixer. Lyle picked up with a chuckle. Delaney's that you or the echo of your reputation? I need help, Marcus said. You still got contacts. Always. Who are we digging dirt on? Not them's me. Silence. I want everything they're going to find. Everything I forgot I ever said or did. You dig it up and you tell me what the damage is. Lyle whistled. You want the truth about yourself. That's the most dangerous story of all. I already lived it, Marcus said. Now I just want to survive it. By the end of the week, Lyle had a folder the size of a phone book. Inside, things Marcus remembered and things he'd buried so deep he flinched to see them again. A partnership he dissolved 2 months before his co-founder was diagnosed with cancer. A union vote he'd suppressed by offering bonuses to employees who stayed quiet. Text messages, depositions, off-record quotes that had somehow found their way onto paper. Lyle looked him in the eye. You want to get ahead of this, you need to own it publicly. Marcus scoffed. Apologize to the same people trying to feed on me. No, Lyle said, to yourself. It took 2 weeks to write the speech. Not a statement, a confession. He didn't hire PR, didn't polish the edges. When it was ready, he booked the town hall in Ashland, the nearest city with a stage. People came because they were curious, or bored or angry. Most expected a denial, some expected a performance. What they got was different. Marcus stood in jeans and a black shirt, no lights, no teleprompter. He looked older somehow, not just in the lines on his face but in the weight of his voice. I'm not here to defend myself, he began, because I did what they said, most of it, maybe more. He talked for 20 minutes about greed, fear, loneliness, about the night he walked out of his childhood home and swore he'd never need anyone again, and how that vow cost him more than he'd ever admit. He talked about Eva, about love and betrayal, and how sometimes the people we trust with our secrets carry the sharpest knives. And then he said something no one expected. I'm giving it away. The crowd murmured. All of it, the lake house, the properties, the company shares. By next year I will own nothing. The murmurs grew louder. You think money makes you free, but if you're not careful, it builds a cage so beautiful you forget you're inside it. And then he walked off stage. No Q&A, no farewell. Just silence. By morning, the headlines were everywhere again. Delaney surrenders fortune in public reckoning. Some called it redemption, some called it manipulation. One outlet said it was the most brilliant rebrand of the decade. But Marcus didn't respond. He'd already driven north. Back to the lake house. Not to stay, but to burn it. He waited until night, so no one would see, lit a single match in the fireplace after draping the furniture in sheets soaked with paint thinner. He stood outside in the trees as the flames bloomed inside the glass walls. No sirens, no neighbors, just fire-consuming silence. A pyre for the man he used to be. The morning after the fire, Marcus sat on the tailgate of his truck, boots planted in cold dirt, staring at the scorched black skeleton of what once was sanctuary. No headlines reached here, no cameras, just the crackle of dying embers and the thick smell of smoke clinging to his clothes. Chris arrived without calling. Again, pulled up, cut the engine, said nothing. He just walked over and stood beside Marcus for a while. They watched together. "You actually did it," Chris finally murmured. "I thought that was some kind of metaphor." "Nope," Marcus said, voice low. "I needed to know I could let go." Chris looked at him sideways. "You sure you're not having a breakdown?" "Probably," Marcus said, "but it feels more like waking up." The fallout didn't stop just because he stopped caring. When you give away millions, the world notices: lawyers, board members, opportunists like vultures circling fresh meat. His team tried to intervene. Advisors begged him to reconsider. A lawyer even threatened to sue on his behalf, claiming mental instability. He ignored them all. And then Eva called. Her name flashing across the screen stopped his heart. It took him 2 days to pick up. When he finally did, her voice was quiet, controlled, like she'd rehearsed. "I didn't know they'd use everything," she said. "You recorded me," he replied, no venom, just the weight of it. "I thought I was protecting myself. I didn't know. I didn't mean to destroy you." Marcus let silence stretch, then, "But you did." A pause. "I read the transcript," she whispered, "the speech, what you're doing." "I'm not doing it for forgiveness," he said. "I didn't call for that." "Then why?" She hesitated. "Because I miss the man you were at that house, and I hate myself for what I did to him." Marcus didn't answer. There was nothing to say. The man she missed was gone, burned with the walls and the photo frames. Months passed. He moved into a one-bedroom above a bar in Madison. No assistants, no board meetings. He volunteered twice a week at a community food program, washing dishes, chopping onions, sweating beside people who didn't know or care who he used to be. At night he wrote letters, dozens of them, to people he'd hurt, forgotten, ignored. Some responded, some didn't. One day, a woman named Carla, a former secretary at his first company, whom he fired when she got pregnant, wrote back. 3 sentences. "I hated you for years. You reminded me of every man who took what he wanted and never looked back. But people change, so maybe you did too." He stared at those words for a long time. And wept. Then came the knock. It was early, maybe 7 a.m. He'd just finished brewing cheap coffee when the sound echoed through the thin apartment door. When he opened it, a girl stood there, 17 maybe, hoodie, backpack, anxious eyes. "Are you Marcus Delaney?" He nodded slowly. I think you might be my father." The world tilted, the walls narrowed. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice barely audible. The girl pulled a photo from her pocket. A woman Marcus hadn't seen in 20 years, Sarah Wells. A brief, broken relationship from when he was barely 30 and already drowning in ambition. "She died," the girl said. 2 months ago, cancer. She told me about you before she passed, said I should come find you, said you weren't ready then, but maybe you are now." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, air thick, heart thundering. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena." His hands shook as he stepped aside. "Come in," he whispered. The past, it seemed, wasn't done with him yet. Lena walked into the apartment like she wasn't sure the floor would hold. Her eyes darted to the peeling walls, the coffee pot, the single chair, the stack of worn paperbacks on the counter. This wasn't what she expected from a millionaire. But then, she wasn't sure what she expected at all. Marcus offered her the chair. He sat on the edge of the bed, palms flat on his thighs like he was bracing for impact. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "You really lived here, not just hiding out or something." "I live here," he said quietly. "It's mine, I chose it." "Why?" "Because everything I thought mattered didn't." He looked at her. "And I'm trying to figure out what does." Lena studied him, that some kind of monk thing. He almost smiled, something like that. She pulled a crumpled envelope from her backpack. Inside was a letter, handwritten, jagged cursive, obviously from Sarah. Marcus unfolded it carefully. "Marcus, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and our daughter is looking for answers I should have given her years ago. I didn't tell you because I didn't think you want the responsibility. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe you would have been a better man sooner if I had. But you're the only family she has now. If you can be something to her, anything, please try, not for me, for her." "Les?" He sat back, breath thin. "I didn't know," he said. "I believe you," Lena replied, "but it doesn't change the fact that you weren't there." "No," he said, "it doesn't." She didn't cry, she didn't get angry. She just stared like she was deciding whether to run or stay. You want to know me, she finally asked, or you just feel guilty? Both, Marcus said honestly. She nodded, that's fair. They spent the day talking, not about big things, just the strange rhythm of starting from zero. Favorite foods, books, music. He found himself listening more than speaking because Lena spoke with a kind of sharp clarity he'd forgotten teenagers could have. She didn't ask for anything, didn't beg for love or history, she just wanted truth. By sunset, she was on the couch, curled under an old throw blanket, scrolling through her phone. He watched her from the kitchenette, a quiet knot in his chest. What happens now? She asked, not looking up. I don't know, he said, but we'll figure it out. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other almost daily. Some days were good: ice cream and used bookstores, long walks, awkward laughter. Others were hard. Lena pulled back, snapped at him, flinched when he asked about her mother. But Marcus didn't leave. He stayed. It was the first time he stayed for anyone. Then one morning, an envelope slid under his door. Inside, a court summons. Eva was suing for damages. Public humiliation, emotional distress, loss of employment. Attached was a statement: he encouraged me to speak, told me our story mattered, and then turned the world against me. Marcus sat down, hands trembling. Lena saw the paper, read it without asking. She wants to drag you back into it, she said. I deserve it, he muttered. No, Lena said sharply, you deserve peace, and so does she, but you don't owe her your life just because you trusted her. He looked up, that same defiance he used to wear, it lived in her now. You gonna fight this? She asked. I don't want to, he said, but I will. Lena stood, then let me help. He blinked, you. She smirked, you think I don't know how to research? My mom was a journalist, I practically grew up on case law and clickbait. He laughed then, a real guttural laugh that startled them both. For the first time in years, Marcus didn't feel like a man climbing out of a pit. He felt like someone learning to stand. The courtroom wasn't grand, just wood panels, squeaky chairs, and fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly overhead. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, not in a tailored suit but a black button-down and jeans. No entourage, just him and a lawyer from a local firm, not expensive but honest. Eva sat across the aisle. Her hair was pulled back, her expression unreadable. She wore navy, the kind of color people choose when they want to look composed, not cruel. But her eyes didn't meet his once. The world watched again, media outlets sent reporters. The gallery filled with people who weren't there for justice but for spectacle. What no one expected was Lena. She sat beside Marcus every day, taking notes in a spiral-bound notebook. No one asked who she was, some assumed she was his assistant. Others whispered daughter, and then dismissed it as impossible. But she was constant, like a lighthouse in the storm. The prosecution leaned into emotion. Eva's lawyer painted her as a victim, betrayed, exploited, manipulated. They played recordings, emails, snippets of the past frozen in sound, twisted just enough to sting. Marcus listened to every word. Did he confide in her? Yes. Did he ask her to write about it? No. But the distinction blurred when the jury heard how he once told her, people should know what it really takes. A sentence meant as vulnerability, now weaponized as consent. The defense tried to hold the line, show that she acted alone for profit, that she'd sold the story before even telling Marcus, that her statements weren't just personal, they were strategic. But the damage was done. Until Lena took the stand. She wasn't supposed to, the lawyer warned against it, too risky, too emotional. But Lena insisted. She sat upright, hands clasped tightly in her lap. My name is Lena Wells, she began. I'm 17, and I only met Marcus Delaney a few months ago because I'm his daughter. Gasps rippled through the room. I grew up thinking my dad didn't want me, she continued. Then I found out he didn't even know I existed, and when I met him I expected nothing. But what I saw was a man who had already lost everything and still showed up for me, every day. She looked at the jury. Whatever he was before, he's not that now. He could have buried this, walked away. Instead, he let it all burn just so he could start over honest. Silence thickened, even Eva's lawyer didn't interrupt. Lena's voice broke just once. You can't sue someone for trying to become a better man. When she stepped down, Marcus didn't move, but inside something in him cracked, not from pain, from pride. The verdict came 2 days later. Split ruling. Damages awarded but minimal. The court acknowledged emotional harm but rejected the idea of manipulation. Eva would receive a symbolic settlement. No victors, no losers. Just a quiet conclusion to a story too loud for its own good. Afterward, Marcus walked out into the daylight. Lena beside him, reporters swarmed, microphones flashed. Mr. Delaney, any comments? Do you regret your choices? Was it worth the price? Marcus raised a hand not to silence them but to shield Lena. Then he said, yes, every single thing. And kept walking. That night they sat on the fire escape of his apartment, sharing a carton of greasy noodles, city lights flickering like distant stars. You're free now, Lena said. Maybe, Marcus replied, or maybe just finally unburdened. She leaned her head on his shoulder, so what now? He stared out at the dark. I rebuild not with glass or cedar, with people with truth. And for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise. A year later, no one recognized Marcus Delaney. Not because he disappeared, no, he was still there, still in Wisconsin, still in that one bedroom above the bar, though now the bartender called him neighbor instead of boss. Still volunteering at the shelter, still showing up at community meetings not to speak but to listen. It wasn't that people didn't know his name. It was that his name no longer carried weight like it used to, not the kind that crushed or controlled or opened doors just wide enough to let the powerful inside. It was lighter now. Human, forged in the fire and tempered by what he chose to carry afterward. Lena moved in that fall, not because she had to, she could have stayed with a friend, could have taken the college dorm option, but she chose him. They repainted the apartment. She picked a forest green for the kitchen wall. He pretended to hate it but secretly loved how alive it made the room feel. They bought second-hand furniture and argued over lamps. She cooked when she had time, he washed dishes and burned toast on weekends. Sometimes they fought, she pushed. He pulled. She wanted answers for years he couldn't explain. He wanted forgiveness she wasn't ready to give, but they always came back to the table. That was the New Deal, no runnings. One evening in November, Marcus stood before a class of community college students, guest speaker for a local entrepreneurship program. He wore the same black shirt, no watch, no notes. I used to think success was what you build, he said. Turns out it's what you're willing to rebuild after it all falls apart. He talked about the fire, not just the one at the lake house, the metaphorical ones, the ones we all walk through thinking they'll destroy us, until we realized they were the only way to burn off what no longer served us. Afterward, a student approached, shy 20 at most. Do you regret losing it all? She asked. No, he said, I regret not losing it sooner. That winter, a letter arrived, handwritten from Eva. It wasn't an apology or a plea. Just a single line. You were right, the truth costs. I hope you found someone worth paying for. He folded the note and put it away, not in a drawer in the fireplace. No flames this time, just release. The following spring, Lena brought home a flyer. Community grant for local startups, renewable energy, education, food access. She tossed it on the table. You ever think about building again? She asked. Marcus studied the flyer. Only if it means something, he said. Then let's build something that can't be sold, she replied. And just like that, he was back in the game. Not with investors or private jets, with Lena and a list of names and a rundown community center as their first HQ. They built slowly, carefully, no shortcuts, no secrets. And when the media tried to resurrect the old headlines, Marcus didn't flinch. Because the man in those stories was gone. What remained was a father, a partner, a builder. Not of empires, but of bridges. Years later, someone would write another article. Not a scandal this time. Just a story. About a man who once lost everything he thought he wanted and found everything he didn't know he needed. They called it the millionaire who burned his castle and built a home. And this time he didn't hide. He sat on the porch of a modest house near the lake, a different house, watching the sun fall like forgiveness across the water. And he smiled, because finally he was home.